been working on a commission of aspen trees throughout the seasons, transitioning from, in this case, fall to winter. And I thought it would be fun to share some of the techniques on what I learned. So today my setup is, as always, well, kind of a mess, but I have my clean water, my dirty water, or my colored pigment, some various brushes, and then my usual palette. And the star of the show is this Bloodstone Genuine with some nice granulation. I'm working on just a small sample here to show you, and I have a couple of different sizes of masking tape which we're going to use to create the trees, and the different sizes will allow us to get some different depths. So since my paper is smaller than the ones I was working on for commission, I'm just going to use the two different widths. For the thicker width, I want to go the whole length of the whole height of the paper so that it appears we're in tight and close. But for those that are in the background, I'm going to leave a little bit of room at the bottom to show that there's the forest floor. So it's really not, there's no really right or wrong. I'm angling them a little to give a little bit of a perspective, but I'm sort of varying it because, in nature, trees don't grow exactly. But it does give a little bit of interest. So just tilt them around, maybe overlap like I'm doing here, as they would grow. And you can see the bottoms of the ones in the background are a little bit rough. And that's perfectly fine. In fact, it's preferred. So just lay out your tape and try to keep consistent bottoms across because they could vary a little bit as the trees might not all be in a row, but we do want to show that there's the larger trees are up front and the smaller trees are in the background. And again, there's no perfect way to do this. I just wouldn't put them completely straight up and down. That's probably not very natural looking. And here I'm just going close to the edge to have a little bit of interest compositionally. And then just secure the tape down so that no water can escape or go underneath, at least on the paper surface. Now I'm just spraying the paper to dampen it so that we get those nice watercolor blends that we're going to be looking for when we put the background down. And the aspens, they change, in the spring they're bright green, in the summer yellow, and in the fall a red, and then of course in the winter they lose their leaves. So you choose which season you want to do. Here I'm going to go with the summer yellow combination, which is pretty common to see photographs of that. They're so beautiful. So choose a couple of different types of yellow or colors of yellow. And don't worry about the mask, just go wherever you want. And then when we take the tape off, you'll see it's a reveal. So here we're just trying to get a background showing that up top the leaves have varied colors. So go darker with your colors and lighter. I sprayed it with a little water to get that nice blended effect. And now I'm adding a slightly different color of yellow. Here's the Aussie Red Gold, which is more intense. So I'm just dabbing it down. The beauty of this is you don't have to be super precise. We're not trying to draw all the leaves. We're just getting some variation in the tones. And this is just first layer, so we're just trying to build that background, and we can go back on top with more detail. But think about this as you're looking in the distance, you just get a sense of how the colors are blending together. And I do like the water on the wet. It spreads that pigment out a little, and even just the water drops give a little bit of texture. So now I'm adding a little bit of the sky color that's showing through. Here's French ultramarine, and it's a nice warm blue. So I'm just going in a little bit, underneath the tree canopy, not as far down as the forest floor will begin. And you don't want any of those, hard edges where the sky transitions. So you can spray it like I'm doing here, just to spread that color a little bit. I've taped my paper down to the table so I can't tilt it, but that's another technique you can do, is just move your paper up and down and the water will allow the ink to flow. Just have fun with this part. You're really just trying to build up some color in the background. There's no right or wrong as usual. This is just an exercise of enjoyment, really. So now for the bottom, I'm spraying my paper to again get some of that nice wet on wet. And I'm just going up with more of a green cast. Here's the green gold. There's still going to be some remaining grass and forest floor during the summer season, even though some of the yellow leaves will fall down. So you can decide, do you want it to be all yellow, like all the leaves have fallen? Here I'm choosing to add a variety and add greens for the grass. And an important step I'm doing here is at the bottom of the trees in the background, I'm adding a little bit of a darker pigment so that when we put the tree trunk details in there, it will blend in nicely. So it just gives it kind of a solid base at the end of the tree. And I'm brushing up to imply grass. I'm not trying to draw every blade of grass, even though it kind of looks like it here, but really this will all blend in nicely. And I really just want a lot of texture. So I'm just varying the brushes, use what you have. If you only have a round brush, that's fine. You'll just get different types of marks. And you can see it's starting to look mottled, which is what I'm looking for. So I'm using a variety of colors, mostly granulating colors, because they'll blend in nicely. There's some brighter greens, and of course one of my favorites, green apatite. I use Daniel Smith colors, but whatever paint you use, all these techniques will be relevant. And the brighter greens mixed in just make it look like the sun is hitting that, or it's a different type of foliage. So we're not, again, trying to show a specific type of plant. We're just saying, hey, there's a lot going on the forest floor here. I'm also using a technique here where close to some of the trunks, again, there's the base of the tree, but even on the ones that are up close, I like to add a little bit of that darker pigment because that will push that tree forward. Because the background, that little trick we always do, make the background darker, makes things pop out in the front. So when we reveal the white of the paper, when we remove the masking tape, it will be more dramatic and high contrast. And I'm being careful here to look across my horizon line to make it the same. If you wanted it to be hillier, you could change that. It's really based on, your preference. I'm not looking at any reference photo here. We're just kind of making it up. It's all pretend. Now I'm introducing kind of that star of the show, that Bloodstone Genuine, whatever you're going to use for the details on your tree. And that is going to allow us to have a smoother transition when we remove the tape. Knowing that watercolor dries a little lighter, I'm just going in a little more intensely now that it's dampened, dried a little bit. So I'm just adding a little more of the yellow to show more leaves in the background, to really get that sense of aspens. They're just so vibrant. It was kind of fun to do this commission because I learned a lot about the trees as I studied the different pictures. And I was told by my client now I need to go to Utah. So once you've filled up your background, you can decide how much you want to let it dry. I'm usually pretty impatient. I don't use a hair dryer really. So I'm probably going to reveal the tape sooner than you may feel. Before I do that, I'm splattering on. This is a great technique because it allows little spots to show through, which is how you would see it in nature. So I'm taking a darker orangey color and I'm splattering it, and I can do the same with the lighter ones for, again, more texture, more contrast to make sure we're hitting all those value notes. And it'll just sort of diffuse in as it's drying. And who doesn't love splattering paint as they're painting? I felt like the sky might need a little bit of a ramp up in a few spots again, just to try to hit those values. I'm not sure this was as successful, but I was just sort of experimenting. It might show through in spots more than in others. Obviously, you can choose to do this or not, or intensify it by spraying a little water on it. I was afraid to hit it with too much water here because then some of the other paint that was drying would start to spread again. So I sort of abandoned that approach. You can see here I'm just sort of trying to lighten it now just by dabbing it with some water. I'm sorry, with a paper towel. So here I'm just going back to some of the other yellow colors I use just for more splatter, more texture, more interest in the background. And you can see I have some of those yellow pockets lower in the horizon because trees could be farther away. Sometimes the saplings start shooting out leaves lower on the trunks. Integrating some of that yellow into the forest floor to show that as the leaves fall, they hit the forest floor. Okay, so now I've dried a little bit and I feel comfortable removing the tape. And just be careful, if your paper is too wet, you can sometimes rip when you remove either a mask or masking tape. So, you know, be gentle with it. It's not like a Band-Aid. We don't need to rip it all off. And don't worry, it looks a little stark now, but when we add the details to the trees, they will appear like they should. Well, I'm not a big fan of masking fluid. I never seem to have very good luck with it. I do like masking tape. And here I had some bleeds at the top, so I'm just taking clean water and kind of wiping that off the page, and that kind of removes it or makes it a little less obvious. So if that happens to you, you know, you can use that to get rid of that extra bleed. So now you want a small brush that allows you to get some very precise marks. I'm going to use one that is a flat brush, and it gives me a lot of control over the marks I want to make for these trees. So here, it doesn't matter what size you use. I like the smaller ones because then, you know, I'm on a smaller scale here with this painting. So just pick one that you feel is appropriate to make both horizontal and vertical marks. And I just want to get rid of some of the extra paint. It's almost a dry brush effect here. So your brush will not have a lot of paint on it. I'm using that Bloodstone Genuine, and I'm just going to dab some marks on the side of each of the tree. You know, these aspens have these kind of black and white sort of appearance, but black I think would be too high contrast. So the Bloodstone Genuine gives us these nice marks, and you can see there's not much paint. So at the base of each tree, you want to go horizontal with some dry brush effects. And when I say that, it just means not a lot of pigment on your brush, and you just drag across to show the grain of the paper, and it will give the tree a lot of texture. And I don't want to go a solid line down the tree trunk. That would look too illustrative. So I'm just trying to capture the edge. And each of the aspens have these horizontal ridges. So I'm just making some small marks. Sorry, my arm is a little bit in the way, but you can see when I remove it that I have just these horizontal stripes. And every once in a while you do just a spot on the tree. A new sapling grows in. Okay, so you just go through and you do this for each tree. It's a little bit tedious, but I did forget one key thing. So backing up, I want to show, yes, we have scale for trees that are in the distance, but I also want to show temperature. So for the trees that are in the distance, I'm going to pick a cool gray. Here's a Payne's gray, and I'm just going to put some marks up on the vertical just to show that the tree, the base is round, and I can go around the contour of each. And don't worry too much about what this looks like. You're really just trying to get some color. The trees aren't all white. They do have some dimension. And here where we overlap, I can just use this little trick where I cover up with a piece of paper and then grab that edge here, and that'll show that this tree is behind the one in the front. Ta-da! So remember, the trees that are in the front, we're going to use a warmer gray. So here, only do the trees in the distance with your cooler gray. You could use a blue, anything that's not too colorful. You just want it to be a little neutral. You could even mix two complementary colors together, and that'll give you a nice gray. So you can see I'm just sort of softly, I'm kind of going down the center or up the center of the trunk and then just spreading it around using the contour. Sorry about that shadow. It was a pretty intense heat day here in Florida. So the sun was really coming into the studio. And here, this time I used the edge, but it was a little uneven, which I thought was nice. It'll break up some of those straight marks. And if your color gets a little bit too dark as you're laying down, just add a little bit of water and blend it in. Okay, so those are the cooled tree trunks. So now I'm going to do the same with the ones that are up in the foreground, but I'm choosing a warmer gray, or in this case, I'm going to use a sepia. It doesn't really matter what brush you use for them. A round brush would be fine. I'm just sticking with my same flat brush here. And even though it looks different now and you think, oh, I have brown trees and blue trees, once we put the details that I started with, then you're really not going to even notice the difference. It's just going to help with that distance, the temperature, using the cooler temperatures to push things back. Warmer colors tend to bring things in the foreground. One last tree to do, and then we're ready to go back to those details that I started with prematurely. And again, you don't want it to look too prescriptive. So, be kind of messy with this and just intuitively feel where the contours are and vary your colors. You can layer some more just for some variety. But I feel pretty good about this. So now I'm going back to those marks I was making initially. And just hitting the edge every now and again. You don't want to be, again, so prescriptive that it looks like a dotted line down the side of your trunk, but just, make a variety and go heavier at the base, because as the aspen trees grow, they're darker. And then very dark at the bottom, showing it's connected to the ground. So we need that sort of shadowed, solidity to the tree trunk. And then as you go down, you can decide where you want those darker spots to be. Again, they won't all be in alignment. So some will be closer to the right edge of the trunk, some will be the left. And then for a few of them, add in where the saplings kind of grow off. So I'm showing here, there's, a tree limb. And we'll do more of those in the background as well. But it's the same process, just repeated. So I'm just going through and I'm using the same color, that Bloodstone Genuine, on all the trees, whether they were in the background or the foreground. And that'll kind of tie everything together for continuity. For the horizontal lines that I'm doing now, you don't have to dot them necessarily. They can just be smooth lines. So you could use a thin brush if you wanted. And again, just, vary where you have these dark spots throughout your composition. It'll add some interest. Some will have more, some will have a few. It looks like I forgot to do those horizontal lines on that second tree, so you get kind of lost in the forest. And apologies, I was recording and it stopped recording. So for the rest of the video, I'm just kind of showing you, I repeated that technique throughout and added a little more texture to the background. Let's go back and look at the big ones I did. They have a little more detail. You can see I put more saplings in the background and was able to add a lot of texture on each of those trees. And you can see the splatters and how everything kind of just implies there's a lot going on in the background. I hope you had fun today. I know I enjoyed it. If you like this type of content, let me know in the comments, and I always appreciate likes and follows. Have a great day.